I'm sitting on the floor with a pile of 100 cards in front of me. Each card has 1 or 2 words printed on it, and my task is to organize them. Not alphabetically or by any other objective measure, but by how much the concept that's printed on each card matters to me. They are giving me a half an hour to sort all the cards and decide which 10 are most important. At first, I'm confident. I'm 49 years old and I've accomplished a lot. I've completed a lot of assignments. I'm good at assignments, so I can do this one. But just a few minutes in, I'm feeling something else. Anxious, insecure, threatened. I can't quite name it, but I feel my neck get hot and my heart rate go up and my thoughts race, and soon a voice inside my head starts saying, "You're going to do this wrong too. You're not good at this either. You're going to disappoint them if you don't get the right answers." The words on the cards are things like patriotism, virtue, wealth, justice, and monogamy. They are personal values, and all I have to do is declare how much they mean to me. But this is a lot harder than I think it should be. And in 30 minutes of doing this exercise, back in October 2019, it started to dawn on me exactly why I was in a hospital for addiction treatment and why the life that I had concocted was falling apart. Like many of us, I had spent much of my life driven to succeed, motivated to perform, committed to demonstrating my value, testing my limits and striving to reach my full potential. I'd gotten excellent grades throughout school, earned a bachelor's degree from Wabash, an MBA from the Ivy League, career promotions, pay raises, performance awards. I'd been a leader in student organizations and in business. I'd walked on all 7 continents, visited all 50 US states. I'd gotten married at the spot pictured up there, and I had even won a spelling bee in elementary school, which is not pictured anywhere, but trust me, it happened. All of that might be why I was invited initially to speak at an event where the theme is success stories. But today I'd like to offer a different idea, because reflection on all of my experience tells me success is not about what we accomplish. Instead, I've come to believe that real success means allowing ourselves to live authentically in 3 specific areas. But before I get into those, let me ask, do you consider yourself to be a high achiever? Do you have a strong work ethic? Do you enjoy recognition or seek approval? Do you push yourself? Do you believe you have to prove yourself? Well, if so, you might be a lot like me. I was all of those. And also, I was not a success. Long before I woke up in rehab, I knew that something was wrong. No matter how much I achieved, no matter how put together I looked on the outside, on the inside I was conflicted, overwhelmed, depressed, and exhausted. And rather than deal with those feelings, I distracted myself from them. I became an alcoholic. I cheated on my romantic partners. I insisted on perfectionism in everything that I did in life as a means of avoiding the important things. I put my head down and I kept grinding toward success, even though the grind itself, well, that was the trap I was trying to escape from. And so at the height of my professional career and just 3 years into my marriage, but under the weight of decades of unhealthy decisions and the projection of this good guy, achievement-oriented disguise, I just broke. And at my lowest point, I finally tried something new and I asked for help. I checked myself into rehab, went to 12-step meetings to get sober, navigated my divorce, and retired early from a career that I found my heart just wasn't in anymore. Basically, I did a complete factory reset. Now, fortunately, I had the resources to be able to do all of that. That is a luxury that many people just don't have, I realize. I also realized that, well, I could have avoided drifting into this crisis in the first place, and more important, I could have avoided dragging my husband and other people who loved me along the way into it as well. And that is where we come back to living authentically, which at the root of the problems I had created, I had not been doing. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to recite or preach some generic platitudes like, be yourself, live your truth, or let your unique light shine, because I would groan at those myself. Instead, what I'd like to offer is a kind of preventive maintenance. So instead of breaking down and having to go in the shop for a major life-disrupting overhaul, it's a routine authenticity tune-up that we can all do on a regular basis. It's not easy, but there are only 3 items in the checklist. The first is to confront our core beliefs. Not about God or society, politics, or other people, although maybe we could look at those too, but I mean our core beliefs about ourselves. To get back to living authentically, I had to do a full forensic analysis to understand what I really believed about myself at a level much deeper than what I was inclined to tell other people. Do you know what you believe about yourself? You might consider trying this sometime. Write down everything you would say if a job interviewer asked you to tell them about yourself. Years ago, I would have written things like, I'm smart, hardworking, confident, competent, resourceful, self-sufficient, maybe even witty. Your list might be different, and you might disagree with my list, but the point is, you'll likely highlight, if you're like me, a number of traits that you would like people to recognize in you. So keep writing and go deeper. Spend some time in total silence and ask yourself some questions like, when did I start showing these traits? How do they pay off for me? And what would I lose if I stopped being that way? If you need some prompting, type core self-beliefs into your favorite search engine and see which sentences start to sound familiar to you. As you go, you're likely to hear a voice inside your head start saying things that are a lot less kind than the positive traits you wrote down at first. Beliefs like, I don't belong here. I need to pay my dues. I'm nothing but a miserable sinner. I am not good enough. Maybe even I deserve to suffer. This is the jabbering inner critic we all have, and if your inner critic is like mine, it will be giving a voice to the beliefs that we hold about ourselves deep down but would rather no one else know. My beliefs, it turns out, were that I was hopelessly defective, easily intimidated, too needy, weak, awkward, incomplete without a companion, deserving of rejection and undeserving of redemption. So I buried those beliefs and my weaknesses under a blanket of relentless effort, which I used to earn people's approval so that I could get some temporary relief from the constant worry people would find out what I really was. Now, a good way to describe this belief system is that it sucks. But a lot of high-achieving people subscribe to some version of it, and like me, they do so subconsciously until they choose to pay attention to what they've signed up for. When I started to pay attention, I realized how deeply ingrained those negative core beliefs had always been, and how much they had always been pushing me to do more and more and more, no matter how much I had already done. Achievement was my attempt to shut my inner critic up, while I just continued to suffer in isolation. And that doesn't sound like success, does it? So today I believe that one key to real success is allowing ourselves to admit to ourselves and to others what we really believe about ourselves. Because then, with help, empathy, and grace, we can start to change those beliefs to ones that are more affirming to our true selves. The second key has to do with expressing our emotions, not just our rational thoughts. To get back to living authentically, I had to put my very well-trained critical thinking brain into the back seat. Not throw it out of the car, just put it into the back seat. Stop rationalizing and repressing what I was feeling and start experiencing and sharing my emotions with other people. Now that probably sounds very new agey, or maybe to some that sounds easy enough. But how thoroughly do we really experience and express our inner emotional lives? The last time a friend asked you how you're doing, how did you answer? Odds are you said, "I'm good." Maybe you admitted you were tired or hungover after last night's party, if you went to it. But if you did, you probably added that you'd be all right. I certainly relate to that. Before I got into treatment, my entire emotional lexicon consisted of 4 words: fine, busy, and pissed off. Expanding my emotional experience started with expanding my emotional vocabulary. I'm 53 years old and I use an emotion chart. There are different emotion charts out there. I would encourage you to research, experiment, and pick one that works well for you. The one I use looks like a dartboard, which is appropriate. It's got a bunch of wedges in it, and each wedge is an emotion that I use to read, like a multiple choice test, to figure out how I'm feeling in any given moment. It helps with the nuance between emotions. Do you know how you're feeling right now? Maybe you're curious. Maybe you're skeptical, or even totally dismissive. I'm feeling a little exposed on this stage, slightly embarrassed and hopeful that you're still interested in what I'm talking about. In any case, I've learned if I can't name it, I can't process it. If I can't process it, I can't let myself fully experience it. And if I can't fully experience it, then I just stuff it and ignore it and let it fester until later it leaks out in some form of acting out. And that doesn't sound like success, does it? But if we can recognize what we're feeling, we can regulate it, we can share it. That is connection, that's intimacy, that is authentic expression. That's why I've come to believe that a key to real success means becoming aware of what we're feeling and willing to share it with other people without trying to put on a brave face. That takes us to the third key, which takes me back to rehab on the floor with a bunch of cards in a pile. I struggled that day, not just because my inner critic was blocking me, not just because a bunch of emotions I couldn't name were flooding me, but also because it became obvious that I didn't know what my own values were. The values I had assumed were mine turned out to be the ones of my parents, my romantic partners, my mentors, and other influential people, which I had passively absorbed but never actively bought into. To get back to living authentically, I had to stop worrying about what impression my values would make on other people and start giving myself permission to claim the values that ring most true to me, even when they might be different. There are different value sorts. The one I used that day in rehab and still use is a PDF that's in the public domain. You print off a bunch of sheets, you cut them into 100 cards, and sort the cards into 5 categories on a scale from not important to most important. You're allowed to end with up to 10 in the most important category, and you can have as many as you want in the others, as long as you acknowledge that at least some of the cards are going to be in the not important category. Everything can't be important. The result of that is a touchstone that you can use to make sure that the actions you're taking and the decisions you're making every day are aligned, consistent with the priorities that mean the most to you. And you can revisit this exercise as often as you need to as you sense your values evolving or your actions drifting, because both of those happen. Because I was almost 50 when I did this exercise for the first time, the results were pretty surprising. The values I had organized my entire life around, things like achievement, duty, leadership, and accuracy, were not really that important to me. That doesn't sound like success, does it? The values that did rise to the top, purpose, community, vulnerability, self-acceptance, and discovery, Well, those are my North Stars today, whether I'm traveling or volunteering, sharing my story, playing with my nieces, or just meeting with somebody over coffee. But those are my priorities, and yours will be your own. Maybe achievement and being industrious are extremely important to you, and that's okay. I encourage you to thoroughly consider and deliberately choose your own values, not adopt certain values because you think that you should. Beware the word should, as in I should value tradition, or I should be happy, or I should man up and power through this. Should is a path away from authenticity, and as my psychiatrist is fond of saying, be careful you don't should all over yourself. With that in mind, I have tried to avoid saying that you should take any of the steps I've described in this talk. That is something that the old inauthentic me would do because, well, I would want to sound like I had all the answers. But we're each on our own path. We have to find our own answers. I'm also aware there is something richly ironic about a guy who stayed in the closet until he was 30 and who later dishonored his own wedding vows, giving a talk about authenticity. These days, I just hope that I can be helpful and make some amends in the world by sharing what I've learned from my experience. Maybe some of what I've shared will resonate with you. As I look back, I realize that I could not be successful when I was deferring the routine maintenance on my core beliefs, my personal values, and my emotional expression. We cannot heal what we don't acknowledge. The Reverend Thomas Merton wrote, "People may spend their whole lives climbing the ladder of success only to find once they reach the top that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall." I hope your ladder is leaning against the wall that's right for you. And I hope you will avoid distracting yourself out of your own authenticity in the name of accomplishments, because allowing ourselves to be fully authentic with each other, well, that sounds like real success, doesn't it? Thank you.